Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West in the world of medicine. Let's bridge the gap between ancient practices and cutting-edge medicine. Let's get started. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. I have one of my mentors here on the podcast with me. You've seen him here before, Dr. Michael Lebowitz, who has authored books. He is one of the founders of Supreme Nutrition products. It's one of the products I love and I endorse fully. And I just want to say thanks, Doc, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
One of the things is the people that love you, Doc, is that we love your canter. I love the way that you chat with me. I love the way that you approach life. I like the way that you approach health. And I know that you had a webinar on last night talking about mold and talking about fungus. I know that it's been a big part of your life about how you have used kinesiology. You used chiropractic, you used different avenues to find ways to assess if somebody may be suffering from the symptoms or certain conditions that are associated with infections. But first thing I always ask, Doc, is that you give us a brief background about yourself. Like, I love the story about how you found out like plant medicine or herbs, they actually helped you with your starting off with conditions you had and how it helped you clean out those infections. Could you give us a brief background?
I can start at the beginning. You'll think I'm kind of weird, but, I grew up in a house that definitely had a mold issue because every time it rained, the basement would be flooded and my job was mopping it up. So, a lot of exposure. And when I was 6 years old, I started weekly allergy shots. And so, I was in this clinic and there'd be like 13 different rooms. And you would get 2 shots. The doctor would go from one room to the next, to the next, to the next, and eventually come back to you. The only thing I remember about it, besides that it didn't help for taking it for 13 years, was the doctor would go into the next room, but his wife would be there like pushing him into the next room and into the next room. Because if he didn't have his wife pushing him, he'd come right back into your room, not remembering he just gave you a shot and give you the second one, even though you're supposed to wait 15 minutes. But once I went to college, when I was 17, I stopped the shots just, probably because of a distance thing. And again, it didn't help. My mother had taken shots probably for 60 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it started like that, growing up with lots of sore throats and swollen glands and different things like that. Mm. And I think, when I lived in Hawaii the first time back in the 80s. I always had migraines and I could never figure them out. I was already a chiropractor at that point, adjusting didn't help, anything like that. And when I started taking the work of Dr. Goodhart and Dr. Schmidt, and they were talking about the role of different food allergies and other things like that, I kind of jumped off their research and found, at least for me, that there were certain foods that definitely affected my migraines. And I was able to get them under control and not have them if I avoided certain things. But there was also, I've always been a collector. And when we lived in West Virginia, I decided I'm going to collect books from the 16 and 1700s and 1800s. So in my treatment room, I had like 1,500 old books. And anything you know about old books is they're moldy.
Yeah.
So I came down with chronic fatigue and I couldn't work past 11 a.m., lots of brain fog. It affected my disposition. And, so it kind of went from there. I started learning more because no one was able to help me. And, I eventually got over it, but I had to learn about, mold, the effect of it on the body, and kind of go from there and work with what we had at that point because things are just beginning. In some ways, the early treatments of mold are better than a lot of the stuff you hear today from functional medicine doctors. They make it so much more complicated. They put so many more things. The price, the cost of treatment and the length of treatment is way more than it needs to be for effective resolution.
Mm, mm. And when you found like with mold toxicity, and we're talking about like the congested throat, the swelling, and we talk about allergy season, um, when an individual, and I know you're pointing at this, you had the mold when you're young, you're mopping it up, you're in a moldy area, you notice that these symptoms come up. With the allergy season coming upon us, and you seeing that many people are suffering, and is there is that why people do suffer at times with allergies, is because there's a hidden mold infection in their body?
It's interesting. I got an email actually this morning because of the webinar we did yesterday from a doctor in Vermont who said that they have during their mud season in the spring, there's all this leaf mold,
Mm-hmm.
and that almost all of Vermont gets sick with all of these different symptoms. And she wanted to know what to do. I'd never heard of that before.
Mm-hmm.
But, funguses, they eat up certain nutrients. They eat up your B vitamins, they eat up your selenium, your manganese, your iron, all kinds of different things. And also, they make you more prone to histamine reactions.
Mm.
So funguses, but also there's cross reactivity between different foods and different outdoor pollens and so forth. Noah was on some site and he was reading me, like if you're sensitive to cedar pollen, you're going to be sensitive to peaches, or it's
Oh,
not,
wow.
that's not the right, I'm just talking off the top of my
Yeah.
head. There was this whole list that was actually not on an alternative medicine site. It was just on a regular, state of Texas allergy alert type of thing. So
Wow.
there are all those type of things too. If your vitamin C levels are low, if your bioflavonoids are low, if your folic acid is low, and again, the fungus just kind of aggravates it. When I got over my fungus problems, it went down to, maybe in a really bad allergy season now, I might have a few days where I'm symptomatic,
Mm-hmm.
while before it was like, months and months like that.
Definitely. Like, and so an area where you live could possibly exacerbate if there's mold in the dirt. I have found though here, Doc, in Tennessee, there's so much construction around
Mhm.
here, and I've noticed in the years that when we started really developing certain areas around like the South area of Nashville, that certain individuals were coming in and they would have like their tests and it would show that they'd have certain types of aspergillus or certain forms of mold. So with the environment like always charging you and always inflaming you, causing some histamine cross reactions, is your first approach as you went through eliminating foods? Is that your first step, or what are like your steps? Like generally, I know everybody's different though.
To be honest with you, I don't think there are steps.
Mm. Mm.
If you look at, we always follow what's called the total load theory, which
Mm.
basically says that there's a certain amount of stressors in your life that you can handle before you become symptomatic. And stressors can be you're having a fight with your friend. Stress could be you go outside, naked and it's 30 degrees out. Stress could be you're eating garbage. Stress can be, you're around perfume all day long. There's all kinds of stressors. And when they go above that threshold, you become symptomatic. So
Yes.
what I do as a physician, I try to address all of those things that I can at once.
Mm.
So we look at infections, we look at foods, we look at nutrient deficiencies, we look at hormone imbalances, and I treat them all at once because the system that we use is very quick. And we find that if we cover all those bases, most of the time the people go below their threshold level and they become asymptomatic quickly.
And I think that's really, really a testament to you, because I know that we know some of the same people, and I know like some of the patients that have gone through your program and your protocol. And one thing that I'm really impressed with is when you say you treat them all at once, you will do muscle testing and you will find out if they need something to clear their metals, like toxic metals. You'll find something that may help clear out some, suspected bacteria, and you can put them on those. And with the dosages, I've had some people ask me, they say, well, can your body handle it all at one time? And I remember you telling me about this. So I want you to explain it more, that if you get the right ratios and the right things that test well for the body, you can put them on all those things because it's what the body needs to actually do it, clean it out efficiently. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, typically we don't supplement with a lot of things. The person might walk out with 4 things compared to that they come in with 40 things, and they
Yeah.
take them off of most of them. So, that's usually not an issue. But if you read, like texts in Chinese medicine and, Ayurvedic medicine and all those things, the dosages are usually way higher than we give.
Mm,
We'll take 8 grams a day, of something. And, we're giving like 2 grams a day or
yeah.
something like that. So, I'm not worried about that. I mean, once in a while, there might be things that are incompatible to give together,
Hmm.
but we can test for that. And that's not that common. But
Yes.
sometimes with applied kinesiology, it is ordered in a sense of the one thing I found, typically, I feel very confident in finding all of the microbial stressors that are
Mm,
going on.
yes.
Um, in some people, the metals will not show up till a future time because the body's just not ready. And if you started detoxing the metals at the same time, it would be too much for the people. Most of the time, I do find them initially, but sometimes it can take weeks to months before you find those, and they could be a critical part of the problem.
No, that's a good point, Doc. And as you were talking about, like when you had mold when you were a kid, let's say an individual had a microbe from when they're young. Maybe it could be strep or it could be a virus of some sort or Epstein-Barr. And is it possible that it stays dormant within the system for years and then like a pollen gets in the air and then they breathe it and it can reactivate it? Is that how you would explain it? Or is that the proper way to,
I think that's a
come
proper
about
way to
with it?
explain it, but I think it's interesting. I've mentioned this before, but like they've dug up, well, not dug up, but they found mummies. And, when they opened up the mummy, they were able to do tests and found that the mummy or the person that was the mummy had Lyme disease. You know,
Mm, yeah.
like a lot of us carry things. Everyone carries EBV. Yeah, everyone carries Coxsackie virus. Everyone carries probably cytomegalovirus and strep and all these different things. And I think in the past we could keep them dormant just naturally. Your body was vigorous; it could do it. In like look at the world compared to when I grew up. How much EMFs did we have when I grew up? I
I
mean,
mean,
very
very
little.
little.
You had maybe a couple. The TV was plugged in the wall, and the light was plugged in the wall, and that was it. Now, it's just all over. I mean, you cannot avoid it. You'd have to go somewhere where your cell phone had no signal. You know, so that's a big stressor. It ups your epinephrine levels, which decreases your immune response. We didn't have GMOs. We weren't. We didn't have to have all these vaccines that a lot of people did have. You
Mm.
know, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard someone say that the magnesium level in food has gone down like 95%. So you take all these different things into account, and basically the body has a much harder time keeping things dormant. So it doesn't,
Mm.
you could just take pollen or something else just to tip the scales, while before they would have needed a major trauma to tip the scales. We're all
And
living kind of on the brink of what we can handle.
like if you find somebody who comes in and they have a dairy allergy and they come in, they say, "Hey doc, I've got a dairy allergy. I'm super allergic to any type of casein or anything of that sort." And then you test them and you're saying, "Okay, well, there could be some dairy allergy there, but underneath it there is such and such infection."
I don't know if I'd use the term underneath it. I'd say along
Mm.
with it.
Along with it. Okay. So like it's been coinciding with it. And so like it's just a trick. Like it almost expressed, it allows you to find it.
I mean, like the average person that comes in, I mean, realize that the average person is not well or they wouldn't come in. But
Mm-hmm.
the average person that comes in, we find we find on average about 7 different microbial stressors.
Okay.
We might
7 different
find
ones.
5 or 6 different foods. We might find a couple of metals, and a couple of deficiencies. That's like the normal. Well, they're not normal, but the person who needs to come in because they're tired, they're bloated, different things like that. So, you know, the problem is a lot of people start searching the internet and they just come in and say, "Well, I have SIBO," or
Mm-hmm.
"I just have this," and it's almost never that you find one thing on someone.
Gotcha.
There
That's
might,
definitely.
there might be one, and the problem, one thing with applied kinesiology, let's say I find these 10 things.
Mm.
I mean, theoretically, one of them could be 95% and the others could be a 0.5%, or they could be 10% each.
Mm.
And so I just treat them all. And the fact that herbs are so broad spectrum, like one herb might cover 5 or 6 of the issues. It's not
Yes.
like, well, I have 20 different things. Here's 20 different products.
That's great because with the applied kinesiology, you could find that one product that could cover so much ground.
Right.
And when you find any individual that comes in with allergies, I know everybody's different, but Doc, do you see, for the people listening out there, are there certain foods or things that you see commonly? Like, I know that there's a broad spectrum of food allergies, but do you see that in our culture today, with the way our food is produced, are there certain foods you always usually find or normally find?
I did a study, wrote a paper it's on my website. I think most, probably 70% of the people show on gluten type foods, probably 70% on dairy, probably 50% on corn, probably 70% on nightshades. About 90% are sensitive. They're not allergic, but they're sensitive to caffeine.
I found that too with your theobromine and your, theophylline, those kits that you have, they're so great. And I'm surprised, Doc, that even little kids are super sensitive to caffeine at times. Not every kid, but a lot of kids that come into the office.
I mean, they probably have it either from chocolate, or I look at caffeine as a liver stress. They have those caffeine clearance tests to check how well your liver's doing. They give you caffeine and they see how long it takes your body to get rid of it. And so when caffeine shows up, it could be a sensitivity, but I look at it more like it's just the liver isn't able to handle it.
That's a good point, Doc, because I think you put it great where you say that allergies with infections, you find them alongside of each other, because I think that many times I've seen patients come into the clinic and you'll start finding certain microbes or certain heavy metals, and they always associate it, which is okay because they experience bloating and tenderness after they eat something, but they're so wary about food. But it's always really important, I tell the people too, that there's things that are working with it. So yes, clean out the foods and stop eating them, but also we got to flush these things out. So if you do find, let's say, a food sensitivity, Doc, and then they have an associated infection that probably could be coinciding with it, how long do you have them stay off the foods that they are sensitive to? What time?
It's funny because there's lots of techniques you can do in kinesiology and immediately the food won't test poorly anymore.
Really? Yeah.
But reintroducing it, most of the time, it's still causing issues. You're getting false negatives in testing. We used to have a much better success rate in reintroducing foods immediately. And sometimes you still can, but it depends what's driving it. Like, let's say you're sensitive to an orange. Maybe it's because you have a leaky gut and you drink orange juice every day. And the leaky gut's due to a fungus. Maybe it's because when you were 2 years old, you grabbed an orange off the shelf and you weren't supposed to, and your mother slapped your hand.
Yeah.
That type of allergy might get better from one of the type of desensitization structural acupuncture techniques immediately. The ones that are being driven by the leaky gut, they won't. Or maybe you'll strengthen the body so it's not as sensitive to that food, but you just develop a sensitivity to another food. You're just shifting things around.
Gotcha. When you have when you're shifting things around, is that the same way that the body in some ways affects certain infections or certain metals? Let's say that a person they've known they have some kind of pneumonia or bacteria in their lung, and you put them on protocols, you start helping the body to eliminate those things. Is the goal to get the body to get to a homeostasis where there's enough energy to keep cleaning out the infections? Like, you get to a point where you test, they don't need the supplements anymore. And if the microbial doesn't test for them, they don't show any more for it, do you usually just, of course, leave that microbial alone because it's not testing anymore, and then find the next load? And then if they're cleared out, the body's ready to handle all the other infections?
It's interesting because, we use mold plates a lot to test people. We have people spit in a petri dish and we see
wow.
over a week. And one reason we do it is it's usually pretty gross and it motivates them to do whatever you say. So they come back with this petri dish, and then you treat them. And if you want to, they're only $3. You can do another petri dish when they're well.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is most of the time the petri dish looks way better. Sometimes the petri dish looks just as bad, but they're well. Mm-hmm. And so I think in those people, what you've done, because again, herbs don't only kill, but they modulate different parts of the immune system, so they increase tolerance. So some people, you've actually just allowed their body to handle the stuff, even though it's still there.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a great point, Doc. That's a great point. So people could live in some aspects, they could live in homeostasis with something if they were able to clean out certain organs and allow their body to actually flush things properly.
Right. Yeah. Back in the day when comprehensive digestive stool analysis is, an alternative medicine, we're just starting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was teaching about infections, the most prominent company offered me all these free tests on, as many patients as I wanted. So I did all these tests, and I did asymptomatic people and symptomatic people.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were doing parasitic tests, and everybody, like 100% had blastocystis hominis.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Because half of them were totally asymptomatic. So do you go after it with a product that, is pretty toxic, like a pharmaceutical, or even an herb that might be really strong that you don't need because your body, or do you just let it live there because the body can handle it? It's an interesting question.
No, I'm with you, Doc. That's one question I have after all these years. And I always wonder, like, can their body handle it? And why disrupt something? Like the same with heavy metals in the mouth. I've heard, and I'm going to get your take on this. For example, they get mercury in the mouth, and some practitioners have even said, leave it alone. Like, you don't need to even open up because the body's adapted to it. Like trying to get mercury out, because some people say their symptoms flare up after they get it removed, and it probably should have stayed there. What do you think about that?
I mean, I became somewhat disabled from having mine removed, and I've known other people that have too. There are, I don't know how many thousands of microtubules in your teeth.
Tons.
And, mercury is the liquid at room temperature. And when you drill into a filling to take it out, the heat vaporizes the mercury and it goes through these tubules. Even if you have rubber dams, that doesn't protect, because you can't, that'll protect it from going into your mouth, but it won't protect you from it going into the tubules. And then it gets picked up and ends up in your brain. So there are times where you can do it. There are most cases it's better to have them be left alone, unless they're the type that they're producing a lot of electrical current. There are different leaders you can put in the mouth and use, put one lead on one filling, another on another, and you can measure the amount of current. So if your battery, if your mouth is acting like a battery, it might be good to get out the ones that are doing that. Those are the people who, back in the old days, you'd see films, these people were disabled, they'd have their fillings taken out and they were dancing the next day. That wasn't mercury, that was current.
That was like electrical current, because the tooth is a battery. And is it like the battery and the tooth is actually connected to organs, like through a Chinese meridian type?
The battery's due to the metals. Batteries are filled with metals. So, it's the nickel, copper, silver, mercury, and especially if you have gold at the same time, which is a conductor. So that will do it more than, the organ-tooth relationship, that tooth might stress that organ.
Yes.
Because of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Doc, you teach in your seminars that one of the things, even with the teeth, and this is one, I think, a very important subject when we're talking about allergies and sensitivities, about tooth infections that are hiding, like infections that could be underneath the root or infections in the jawbone. Like we have I love Oral Defense. It's a great essential oil blend that you could put in the gums. I put on my toothpaste and brush my teeth with it. But how important is that when it comes to allergies? Do you find that many times?
Actually, we changed the name to Oral Supreme a while ago because there was some other company using Oral Defense, and we didn't want to get in trouble. To be honest with you, most people we don't need to address it. Because again, the body's kind of holding it under control. There are certain ways we do test for it and we do see it. But now that it seems like a lot of dentists really jump on some things, like they want to do deep cleanings and they want to do this and they want to do that. And they're opening up Pandora's box. So suddenly you're, allowing all these microbes that your body's holding in check to just go crazy. So something like Oral Supreme is great, because then if they decide to do deep gum cleaning, which they probably won't have to do because the condition would have been fixed, but if they did, they won't open up Pandora's box and send you, just down the toilet.
Definitely. I mean, I think that when we look into like what could lead the body to have allergic symptoms, we're talking about histamine, and when we talk about histamine being pushed to the brink, and where it's like now you're hyperreactive to everything. Let's say it's something in the mouth, or it wasn't. Maybe it's in the head. Is it good to, like, for individuals that have swollen glands, like they have jaw pain or they have the swollen lymph nodes around their ears? If a person has that, is that a big concern? Like they're always in histamine response, even though let's say they don't have a runny nose or itchy eyes, but if they have swollen glands, does that mean they're pretty much going to have a histamine response or a histamine test in your experience?
It doesn't have to be histamine. I mean, there are lots of things that can cause inflammation. It could be a prostaglandin reaction. It could be a kinin reaction. It could be all kinds of different inflammatory. It could just be, your body reacting to some type of microbe, but it's not necessarily histamine.
Got you. Because there's so many different products that are out there to help reduce histamine. And do you find that there's so many that like break down histamine?
What I find is every year there's a new fad. Mm-hmm. Be it SIBO one year, or MCAS one year, or whatever it happens to be, and it usually is a part of the puzzle, but it's not as big a part of the puzzle as they make it be. It gives an opportunity to come out with new products, come out with new lab tests. There's millions and millions of dollars being made with every new fad thing that comes along. And again, they're valid, but they're typically, I haven't seen anything be as powerful as getting rid of mold and dealing with foods, compared to all these people that think, oh, it's all a 5-MTHF problem, or it's all this, or it's that. And you rarely see those things really turn around people, especially taking them out of context. If the histamine's high, I mean, I have lousy, DAO genes, so I'm more likely to have high histamine. But if I do all the right things, I don't.
That's a good point.
Histamine specifically, I treat the things like the fungus, and if I eat a lot of corn, it creates a histamine response. Different things like that.
I think it's a really great point, Doc, because when we talk about fads, one thing that has always been interesting to me is now there's a big talks about mitochondria or longevity. It's something that you see in our health realm, where every 2 or 3 years there's something new that comes to the surface. And I'm with you about, let's say they want to talk about mitochondrial health, but in my experience, and I've learned from you, that you can have a mitochondrial issue, but you can give all the nutrients in the world to the mitochondria. But let's say they had an underlying microbe, or 2 or 3 of them, you just need to flush them out and their mitochondria turn back on. And that's one thing I've learned, that I love it that every single person has a multitude of things, and it's something different with each person, basically.
I mean, I tend to be a naturalist. And, I always, when we used to talk about chiropractic, all these people having to go to the chiropractor. And I used to say, well, how many squirrels out there do you think need a chiropractor? Probably very, very few. Eating what God put there for them. They're going to sleep when they're supposed to. They're living the life that they were designed to do.
Yes.
And we don't do that in any way at all, pretty much. And we end up suffering with a whole lot of things as a result of that.
Wow. I
I love vegetables, and I'm a big vegetable eater.
Over the past few weeks, I've shared about WaveWatch, a sound frequency wearable designed to help your body rest, rebalance, and heal naturally. In my recent interview with John from WaveWatch, we discussed testimonies ranging from sleep and anxiety to tremors, kidney stones, and PTSD. The frequency sets are rooted in holistic health and frequency medicine. And there's an amazing sleep set designed to play all night, which is based on the Chinese medicine body clock, which will help your sleep excel. WaveWatch is family run by Linda, Joseph, and John, and they truly care about people's health beyond just a product. It's easy to use, non-invasive, and risk-free with a 30-day guarantee. Try today and get $100 off with code Dr. Motley at wavewatch.com/Dr. Motley. Here's a crucial health secret. Our cells need nutrients, just like we do. The problem is some of the most vital nutrients don't always make it into our cells. Liposomes are microscopic spheres that transport critical nutrients into the bloodstream and into the cells. Livon Labs was the first company to use liposome-encased dietary supplements. Their liposome-encased vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant that supports your immune system beautifully. It is proven to give long-lasting antioxidant power to the blood and to the cells. It protects your DNA, and it fights oxidative stress that can weaken immune cells. It's great for this time of year when you're fighting every virus known to man. Right now, you can get 10% off Livon Labs site-wide. That means 10% off their liposomal vitamin C for immune health, vitamin D for healthy bones, or glutathione for reducing oxidation. Go to livonlabs.com, that's livonlabs.com, and enter the code MOTLEY. Let's feed our cells.
But I used to be a forager back in the 60s and 70s. We used to go out and forage salads, basically. We would pick chickweed, and we would pick sorrel, and we would pick all these different wild greens and turn them into a salad. And, if you ever pick a wild carrot?
No, I never have, Doc. I'm trying to think. Never have.
The wild carrots are white, and they're very stringy, and they're thinner than a pencil. They're much thinner than a pencil. It's almost like, almost like a piece of yarn, that thick. And, look at carrots now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the foods we eat, don't look anything like the foods they used to. Look at apples.
Mm-hmm.
Compare them to crab apples, which is probably how they all looked, back in the day.
Yeah.
So, they were much more concentrated, rich in phytonutrients. Go out and pick wild strawberries, and they're, this big. It's just a different world these days.
It definitely is.
And the thing is, you look at things like, so God put different things in different places. Like when you have poison ivy grow, you have jewelweed growing really close to it, which is a remedy for poison ivy. When animals are sick, they know to go to different plants and eat them. So it all worked out. We've made things so complicated by some of it. We need to be complicated just because of all the stuff we've done, and the lives we live. But even with that, we've made it way more complicated. Look at what's stressing the body. Sure, there are going to be some genetic challenges that might have to be addressed differently. But in general, look what's stressing the body and remove the stressors and give the body what it needs and see what happens. Most of the time, there's not much left to treat. Sometimes there is, sometimes you have to, give a whole lot more of something. I mean, some people might need some emotional work for sure and other things like that, but treat all those things and cover all the bases. And you don't necessarily, you at least in our practice, we rarely have to go to the extent of all these expensive labs and stuff. I don't mind them. They're kind of fun to look at and fun to watch them improve, but we never treat by what they say.
That's a good point, Doc. I mean, like that's like how you operate with labs. And I love watching them too. I like to see how different things change. And even with labs, like there's a lot of like nutrient evaluations. There's a lot of minerals and vitamins. And you're talking about how, roots and plants are different than they used to be. there are certain sections, I mean, even healthcare, where individuals say that you got to get all of your nutrients from your food. But if the food is less dense in nutrients because of the way the world is now, do you find it very hard for the body to get enough nutrients from your food?
Ask me that question in a sec, because
Yep.
So there's a friend of mine, Dr. McCord in St. Petersburg, and he had done some testing. He was blind testing different microbes on this woman, and he found H. pylori.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd come in because she had very low ferritin levels, basically zero.
Mm-hmm.
And he did all of his stuff as a really good doc, and all he found was H. pylori. And he said, well, this is what I found. And so she goes home and she's a researcher. And she comes up with all of these different articles in medical journals on how H. pylori lives on iron.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was probably the cause of her low ferritin. I mean, you could give her iron infusions, but maybe look at getting rid of the H. pylori and the iron's just going to pick up. In terms of that, there are some people that definitely do well on taking something like a multivitamin. I mean, we have one that we made that we think is the best one because of, one, what we put in, but two, what we didn't put in. At the same time, there are some people who, like I go out of my way to eat nutrient-dense foods.
Mm-hmm.
I eat seaweed in various forms. I eat liver. I make vegetable juices. Different things that are very high in nutrients, so I can get things in a food form. Like most people don't do well on fish oil, but people do well on really healthy fish. Fish oil is just refined, and the body doesn't really know what to do with it in some ways because, again, it doesn't exist in nature. And in some people, it's an overload. Some people can do okay, but it's usually the healthy people that can do okay on it. The sick people usually will react to it.
That's a good point.
And some people will do. My super sensitive people usually don't do well on multivitamins, even like a really clean one like ours. But the average person will do well on it, and they might use it as kind of a background. But the really sensitive people, you're going to have to find foods. And again, if you get rid of their infections are eating so many nutrients. If they're eating food they're sensitive to, it's going to lower their zinc, it's going to lower their P5P, it's going to lower their folic acid. So just addressing those things even with the food supply being poor, at least you're going to up their absorption rate and decrease their need for certain nutrients. So they need less of them because they don't have to combat certain things.
That's a really great point, Doc. When you're talking about low ferritin and iron being like H. pylori, because I did as well research at times where I would find individuals that have certain low amounts of minerals and vitamins, and even certain B vitamins, because there's certain different test kits, of course. And Doc, what I did is I started checking them for, of course, microbes with kinesiology, and they would have these tests about their minerals. But when I started testing for the microbes and certain, infections or metals, started using herbals to clean them up, a lot of the testing for the minerals went away. So I said, well, before you start taking all these minerals and vitamins, excess amounts, let's go ahead and try to clear out the infection. So I started studying about that. And I was with you, Doc, I'm with you about seeing how many infections eat the nutrients. I'm a nerd about it. I could not believe how many bacteria, how many fungal will eat like certain nutrients, B vitamins and minerals. And it is alarming. Like there's journals about this and people don't realize a lot of infections eat your nutrients. So if what you're saying is like, if you can get the body to help clean out these infections, it may help your nutrient levels. And so you could actually get the benefit of eating nutrient rich food.
And also, if you are taking a lot of nutrients and you have infections, you might be feeding the infections more than you're feeding yourself.
And that's something that really I need to even check even more, because some individuals, when they come in, they'll have certain B vitamins and they won't feel good, right? They'll go, I've been taking this B vitamin, multi B vitamin. I've been taking this and I still don't feel good. Or either that, they're not absorbing it, of course. And that's another thing too.
What's really interesting is when we lived in Scottsdale, among our many moves, there was the top biofilm doctor was there. His name was Stephen Fry, and he was a biofilm researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And we called him up and he invited us over, and they would take different blood smears and look for biofilms. And we were talking about, well, how do you get rid of them? And he said that a lot of biofilms, and I know biofilms aren't living, but they have living things in them. But he said a lot of biofilms feed on fat.
Really?
And that on some people, the only way he would clear the biofilms, and this is actually looking on a blood smear to see if they're there, was at least temporarily putting them on a low-fat diet.
Really?
And not the craze these days. It's kind of the opposite these days, going high-fat.
Yes.
And there are definitely other things you can do, and he wasn't aware of like different herbal formulas and other things that can help. But in terms of diet, it fed on that. And we found with our testing that if you had a lot of biofilms, if you were taking calcium, if you were taking different vitamins, B vitamins, and so forth, it actually made the biofilms worse.
That makes sense, Doc. Is that why? Doc, whenever you're doing some testing, and I found this at times because remember when methylation has become with 5-MTHF, it's become very popular. And when we do kinesiology testing, I would find that some people could not even handle any B vitamins. And the first thing that you would want to give to somebody when they have, methylation is a methylated B. But I would not find that they could even use it for months. Like I could not get them to test for it, or vitamin D at times. And then after about 4 to 6 months cleaning stuff out, they could take it. Is that what happens? Is like there's something that needs to be cleared out for it to be effective?
Yeah, I mean, I don't typically treat methylation issues. I just treat the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually if I was listening to something the other day, I forget who it was. I think it was a doctor in Portugal. He was talking about autism, and he basically was measuring folate levels. And he found that, again, if he cleaned up infections and other things and they were eating a lot of greens, that they would have enough folate even if they had, a SNP in the whole thing. And, a lot of times I'll look at homocysteine levels. Like I have really high homocysteine levels, and Noah does, and it runs through our family. But if your homocysteine level is low, even if you have SNPs, I usually don't worry about it. If their homocysteine's way high, maybe I'll check a couple of products. But again, I know I have some autistic kids that go crazy if you give them a methylated B vitamin. Mm-hmm. And for me, no matter how much of those products I take, my homocysteine level doesn't go down.
It doesn't go down at all because you have the SNP for it. And so
and most people's SNP, they still goes down. Mine doesn't. So, what does that mean? And should it even be a concern or not? It's hard to say. Just because you see something on a lab, my wife's blood pressure, she's like one of the healthiest people I know, and her blood pressure has always been 80/50.
To me, I'm with you at times when things don't measure up or don't match what the status quo is. I think if you're healthy and everything's working well, I try to leave as much as I can alone. And that's a big thing about in the health field when they even talk about any type of neurological condition. That's another thing I want to talk to you about, Doc. There's so much emphasis too on anxiety and depression. And I know that you test the body and you just give it what it needs, but I know this is a general question again, but when you find people that come in and they're really anxious, or maybe they're really depressed, do you find that there is a common theme among them? Is there any type of common infections, or it's just like a multitude of infections? You just got to find the infection and clean it. Is there any like a common theme that you usually find with those?
Let me tell you about my first patient when we moved to New Hampshire. This was like early 80s. And he said, I'm really depressed. I want to kill myself. And I don't know why. I love my wife. I love my job. I love God. I just have, this amazing life, and I want to kill myself. You think about what techniques were available back then. So I did testing. My microbe testing was very rudimentary. I tested foods. I don't know why. I was just doing things I did on initial exam. And I found that he was sensitive to tomatoes. I said, I can't find anything on why you want to kill yourself, but you are sensitive to tomatoes. Why don't you stay off? As soon as he took tomatoes out, he stopped being suicidal. And, he was able to turn on and off suicidal feelings depending on if he ate tomatoes or not. So I'm not saying that's common. He might be the only one in the world for all I know. Mm-hmm. But, it goes to the anything can cause anything. But that being said, there's one amino acid, L-tyrosine. And L-tyrosine turns into epinephrine or adrenaline, basically. And adrenaline is a mood elevator. It's a stress handler. It's a libido elevator. And if I were to pull 100 women off the street, 70 of them would need tyrosine.
70.
If I were to pull 100 men off the street, 3 of them would need tyrosine.
Really?
Which shows one thing, that men and women are different. But 2 is that, what eats up tyrosine? There's probably some genetic difference there that I'm not aware of, that, why women need it and not men. But I do find that if you have unresolved baggage and it's running around your subconscious, your body's going to need stuff like epinephrine to deal with it. So you're going to run your tyrosine down the tubes. And giving women tyrosine can be like a game changer, where suddenly, they have energy, they have a desire to live and so forth. I mean, we're going to come out with a product that is mainly tyrosine, but has a few little herbs that we think enhance it even more. There's some herbs like mucuna that'll turn into tyrosine, or, things like American ginseng, but we want something. Sometimes we actually need to give tyrosine, and we're just going to add an herb or two that might facilitate it. But, so we find that much more than, say, serotonin deficiencies. Epinephrine deficiencies are the type where I want to be left alone, leave me alone, I just want to crawl up in a ball and die. Serotonin deficiencies are more like, I'm depressed, I want to call up everyone I've ever met in my life and tell them how depressed I am.
That's really good.
As much. And then the low GABA people, which are the other depression people, they're driving themselves crazy.
Mm-hmm. So if they're driving themselves crazy, do you give straight GABA to those individuals?
On occasion, we definitely, we probably use 100 bottles of tyrosine to 20 bottles of GABA to 2 bottles of tryptophan or 5-HTP. If we looked at patients. GABA sometimes can be very useful. You usually will use a pharma GABA. It's a patented form. But we'll use it on occasion.
So okay, Doc, I love that when you say I'm driving myself crazy, but what was the one that had low 5-HTP? What was the mood that they were in, or what is that?
I want to call up everyone I've ever met in life and tell them how depressed I am.
Man, I got to remember this, Doc. I'm going to keep bugging you about, this is great. I'm going to bug you about these phrases, because I always have to think about when I'm talking to the patients, how they respond to me,
Yeah, if they say that they're depressed, I usually ask them, would you rather be left alone, or would you rather be around a lot of people? And 95% of them say left alone.
Yeah. Okay. This is good. And when you find like DHEA, do you find, like with their testosterone, do you ever do DHEA or anything like that sort, like giving people that?
No.
No? Okay.
Because I'm afraid that it's going to decrease their body's production.
Gotcha.
So usually we'll do things to increase adrenal function. We might give sheep testicle.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful product. I love it. It's great.
It definitely helps with testosterone levels, even though it doesn't have any testosterone in it, but it also helps with DHEA levels. If someone was just totally a basket case, I might give very low dosages of DHEA very temporarily, but again, I'm afraid of causing adrenal suppression even further.
That's a good point. I find the sheep testicle not only helps with like testosterone. I've found that women have tested for it really well, and when they've had very, very low, like they have testosterone issues, and it's really helped them out with their hormones.
One thing is, just because something's non-prescription doesn't mean it's good. For a while, everyone was taking melatonin. Mm-hmm. But again, that's going to decrease your body's ability to make melatonin. So it'd be better to, work around it and do some other things. The same with DHEA. It's funny. My wife and I are watching the show Murdoch Mysteries, which is it's been on 19 seasons, and we're up to season 4. And it's about this detective, and it's a really cool show, but they have a doctor on it. And this goes on in 1899. And so they have a kid, and he has, some disease, and they're giving him basically a shot of mercury. And then this kid had cholera, and they gave him calomel, which is mercury chloride. And those were acceptable remedies back then, and they did do the job. I mean, mercury is going to kill stuff.
Yeah.
It's kill you, but it's going to kill stuff. A lot of things that are non-prescription, people just think they're fine. Colloidal silver, even though it'll, accumulate in your brain and might cause symptoms 10 years down the road. Or, other things, the different hormones, the DHEA, and, everything that suddenly is okay, from a prescription level, suddenly you can have it. They think it's, does wonders, and it doesn't have any repercussions, which, all the humic and fulvic acids and all the other things, you have to be really careful. I tend to be skeptical, and I have to prove things to myself that they're really okay, because I've seen too many things, suddenly, how many years ago everyone needed blue-green algae.
Yeah.
And, how many people go and buy blue-green algae now?
Nobody.
And every year
very little.
There's a couple of things like that. They just become super popular, and they fall by the wayside because they really didn't, do anything, or they had negative consequences too.
That's a good point, Doc. What's your thoughts when we're talking about hormones or anxiety? I touch a bit, I would say, with talking about allergies and sensitivities. Are there ways that you like to clear the liver? Are there particular herbs, or are there particular things that you suggest to just keep the liver flushed in this season?
There's two things. One of them is Schizandra, which to me is my favorite.
Yeah,
we came across another herb that we're coming out with within the next couple of months. I don't even know the whole name of it, but it starts with Ditti, like Ditti. And it has all of the, like if some people do really well with artichoke, but artichoke's an extract, it's really refined. Some people have negative consequences. And Ditti, I think it's something like Ditti chloria or cornea or something like that. But it has the same active ingredient of artichoke, but we can give it in a whole food form and be therapeutically effective without any of the negatives of artichoke.
That's amazing. I would love
that one, just because we have a supply of it, but once it comes out, I might be talking about that one also for liver. Okay. And we use Chanca Piedra, which our product is called Bodyguard, and it's a little more for gallbladder than liver, but they're so connected that it can help. But again, why is the liver, overburdened? Is it toxins from infections? Is it inflammatory byproducts from foods? Is it, chemicals? I saw a TV commercial for glyphosate this week. It's like, it's been, I don't know how many years since I've seen a commercial like that. And suddenly, they're doing commercials again. Are you spraying it on your lawn, or do you live in a community that you don't have control over what they spray on your lawn, or you live next to a golf course, or, there's so many things where you have unresolved anger. There's so many things that can clog up your liver, try to deal with those too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love Schizandra. I love Bodyguard. One of the things that I find is individuals who have really bad allergies and they have clogged up liver, I think is the effects of hemorrhoids. I find that patients that have hemorrhoids, it's always liver and gallbladder, and I put them on Chanca Piedra, Schizandra. And one of the things I always try to combine, but I'll usually find is something a bit for parasites, and it'll knock those hemorrhoids right out, and their allergies get a lot better pretty quickly. This is all gold information, Doc. I love having you on here. So when this season is coming upon us, and one of the things you're talking about is if you have some unresolved anger or frustration about emotions, especially with allergies, I'm talking about the liver and about that congestion. Are there techniques that you suggest to individuals if they're not in your area to come see you or NOAA? are there techniques that you like to use to help people with their unresolved emotional fatigue?
There's one spot I'm not, definitely as up on meridians as you are, but there's one spot on the gallbladder meridian that's about halfway between the knee and the hip.
Yeah, but 32.
Outside, it's not like, I forget, it's not exactly a point like 32 or 33. It's kind of in between 2 points.
Okay.
And if someone has unresolved anger and you push into that, that's going to send them through the roof. You might have to, search a little bit, within like an inch or two to find it. But usually they have something like that. They can treat that manually or maybe with needles, and that might help a little bit. I tend to be, I tend to look at it a lot theologically and just have people really be more God focused. But I do like things like EMDR. That can be very helpful. And there are a lot of practitioners. Again, if your biochemistry is all worked out first, something like EMDR is going to do a lot better. But everyone I know that's gone to EMDR practitioners, a lot of good has come out of it. Can be a little bit traumatic. There's a paper on my website about some technique. We developed a machine that would bring up all kinds of repressed memories, and people would remember stuff, even like some remembered being born, and they were able to tell you what was in the room. And then when they talked to their mom, it was all true, different things like that. But it took many, many treatments, and eventually we stopped doing it. But you're basically using different colors of the visible light spectrum to stimulate repressed memories.
I love it. I love this kind of information, Doc. I got more questions, but I know I'm sensitive about your time and about your day and what I always tell people, like, I could keep talking. I've got like 4 more questions that are in my head right now, but I always say we can do another podcast, and we can go through it. And I think this has been really good about not just allergies or sensitivities, but giving people a broad spectrum of info about what they need to dive into and check out. And I'm so grateful that, we get to talk, Doc, and I consider you my friend, and I'm so appreciative, like all the knowledge you share with us. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, but I think it's hard these days with social media because, people like look at, people like yourself actually, and this is not disrespectful for you, but, they almost put guys in like this God type position. Like my son, it's Dr. Noah, and it's like, and they listen to everything you say, and, we can give out good advice, but we are making generalizations, and then some people, their advice might be, because they have a financial stake in something, or they have a very, narrow spectrum. Everything is parasites. No matter what you do, your problem is parasites, or, your problem has to be candida, or your problem, those people I would stay away from because they don't know what they're talking about. It's much broader than that. Maybe they get lucky and it brings people below their threshold level in some instances. But, look at someone who's looking at everything and you're going to do a lot better. It might be different if you break your leg, you want to go to someone who can set your leg. They don't have to, look at your brain chemistry for that. But, when we're dealing with all of these issues that can affect your disposition and affect your energy and affect everything else, you have to look at everything more holistically.
That's a good point, Doc. That is true. So many times where you keep peeling back a little bit of layer here and a little layer there and a little back here. And you'll find that some individuals even come in, their patients, they think, well, it has to be all parasites. Then you break some layers down and you say, well, it could be that, but it's a little bit of bacteria, a little bit of virus. It could have been this or that. There's so many things. And you're right. Finding somebody who has a broad spectrum of, techniques, but also is open to finding as much as they can for you. And I'm with you on that, Doc. And I really appreciate you for this advice.
And you guys, I know, you do, but all these influencing people, you need to stay humble, and you need to stay transparent, and all that kind of is just really important.
I agree, Doc. And when I'm always wary too, when any practitioner, any influencer, any health person says they absolutely know what's going on with somebody, and this is the only thing that you need to fix. From our years of experience, I find that I think I have a good idea on something, and then I start doing testing, and I tell myself I'm completely wrong, and I've been wrong about that. And I'm actually humbled and very happy I'm wrong at times. It helps me learn more. So I'm really grateful about the experiences. I know you don't use your social media account very well, Doc, but where could we find you, or we go through Noah's account, Dr. Noah's? Like, where could we?
Sometimes different people interview me, like you know, Noah definitely more often, you know, Dr. /Dr. Noah DC, I think. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Balancing Flamingo will interview me. Once in a while, we'll post something on mine just when someone else interviewed me, but I don't post on the site, Supreme Nutrition site. I write a free newsletter that anybody can, if they go on my website, michaelliebowitzDC.com, they can subscribe to it. It's mainly for physicians, but most people would get something out of it. It has different case histories and talks about new products. That comes out every month, or at least almost every month. We teach classes all over the place, and those are announced in the newsletter also.
That's a good point. Okay. You guys need to check out Dr._Noah DC and even at Supreme Nutrition Products on Instagram and on their website. Their website has a very good search engine, and you can go in and research the supplements, the herbals.
Oh, and also on the Supreme Nutrition Products, not Supreme Nutrition, that's a different company. Supreme Nutrition Products YouTube channel. We have hour-long talks on fungus and metals and other things like that.
Oh, you guys heard here first. I'm a proponent of Dr. Leowitz's book, Body Restoration. He has 2 books, but Doc, that's one of the books that stays in my backpack, and I am often on planes reading that book. So I appreciate it, and it gives such a great information about physiology, about the basic organs, and I mean, it goes in depth. It tells you a lot about herbs. I mean, it's one of the.
I think that's only available digitally now. For some reason they stopped printing it. I don't know why, but it's only like $1.99. Digital.
I have it digitally, but I also have it like in print. I like it in my hands, but guys, I would check it out. Everybody check it out. And this has been really good, Doc. I'm so grateful. Thank you for joining me today. And I'm going to have Dr. Noah on. He's going to be in town here in Nashville in a few weeks, and I've got to get everything prepped for that. So I'm going to try to see if I can get him at a lunchtime during a break, Doc, and see if he can jump over and do a live with me. I'm grateful. I know you're a busy man. I appreciate you. Everybody out there, if you have allergies, any type of infections or suspected infections, and you are suffering from different type of conditions, you can also look at the ICAK, the International College of Applied Kinesiology website. They do have doctors that are around the world, and you can find practitioners near you. And also, if you know anybody that suffers allergies, send this podcast to them. See if they benefit from it. Look at Dr. Noah, Dr. Michael's social media. And if you guys have any more questions, send us some comments. See if we can help answer them. And we can have Dr. Liowitz here back on the podcast to answer any of those questions. And we really appreciate you all out there. From all of us here at the Ancient Health Podcast, have a great day and be blessed. Before we wrap up, please remember that the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed through this podcast, and the use of information here or materials linked from this podcast is at your own risk. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen, and do not disregard or delay seeking medical advice for any condition you may have. Our content may include sponsorship and affiliate links, through which we earn a small commission on sales made through those links. Thank you for joining us today on the Ancient Health Podcast. We hope you've gained valuable insights into the harmony between Eastern and Western medicine. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Remember, true health is about balance, mind, body, and spirit. So stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to explore how ancient wisdom and modern science can work together to help you thrive. Here's to your health, balance, and well-being. I'm Dr. Chris Motley, and I look forward to our next episode together.